My name is Harrison Gallagher. I am 70 years old, and I spent almost my entire life building things that were meant to last forever. For more than 40 years, I worked as a structural engineer across Texas. I learned that every disaster starts the same way, not with a loud crash, but with a tiny crack that everyone ignores. I could spot those cracks in steel, concrete, and glass before anyone else. But somehow, I completely missed the biggest crack in my own family. Everything changed 4 days before my daughter's wedding. That Tuesday afternoon, I drove to a small, custom tailor shop in downtown Dallas for my final suit fitting. The owner, Dominic Rossi, had been making my suits for over 20 years. He wasn't just my tailor anymore. He was one of my closest friends. The second I walked inside, I knew something was wrong. Dominic looked at me like he had seen a ghost. His face turned pale. Without saying hello, he locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and grabbed my arm. "Harrison, come with me." "What happened?" "Please, just trust me." He hurried me through the shop and pushed me into a private fitting room in the back. "Stay here." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "No matter what you hear." His hands were shaking. "Don't make a sound." Before I could ask another question, he shut the door. I stood alone in complete darkness. For a moment, I honestly thought my old friend had lost his mind. Then I heard the bell above the front door. Someone had entered the shop. Two sets of footsteps crossed the hardwood floor and stopped only a few feet from where I was hiding. The first voice made my stomach tighten. It was Preston, my future son-in-law. The second voice belonged to Valerie, the woman everyone believed was his older sister. Preston laughed. Not the friendly laugh I had heard around my daughter. This one was cold, confident, almost arrogant. "So," Valerie asked, "is everything ready?" "Almost," Preston replied. "The old man still thinks the paperwork is only about taxes." They both laughed. I felt my heart begin to race. They were talking about me. Valerie lowered her voice. "And the medical authorization?" "He'll sign it without reading a single page," Preston answered. "Richard will hand him the documents during the rehearsal dinner, and Harrison will never question it." Medical authorization? That had never been mentioned in any meeting. Then Valerie asked another question. "What about the insurance policy?" Preston didn't hesitate. "It becomes active after the wedding." My hands tightened into fists. "Insurance? What insurance?" Then came the sentence that changed my life forever. "We just need the honeymoon to go exactly as planned." Valerie chuckled. "The Swiss Alps? Perfect place for an accident." Every muscle in my body froze. I stopped breathing. My daughter hated cold weather. She had never climbed a mountain in her life. The entire honeymoon had been Preston's idea. Valerie spoke again. "And her supplements?" "She takes them every morning." "Any problems?" "She's tired all the time now," he laughed quietly. "She thinks it's wedding stress." A chill ran through my body. For weeks, Maya had complained about feeling exhausted. She said she couldn't stay awake. She felt dizzy almost every afternoon. We all blamed the wedding. Now I wasn't so sure. Valerie sounded pleased. "Good. Keep telling her they're natural vitamins." "I will." "And Harrison?" Preston laughed again. "He still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to his daughter." Those words hurt more than anything else, because they were true. I had welcomed him into my family. I had trusted him. I had even thanked him for making my daughter so happy. Then Preston quietly said something I will never forget. "When we're back from Switzerland, everyone will feel sorry for me." There was a short silence. Then he added, "Nobody questions a grieving husband." At that moment, I realized I wasn't listening to two people planning a wedding. I was listening to two people planning my daughter's funeral. I didn't remember leaving the tailor shop. One moment, I was standing in complete darkness, listening to Preston calmly discuss my daughter's death. The next, I was sitting behind the wheel of my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands had gone numb. My first instinct was to call the police. Then reality hit me. What would I tell them? That I overheard part of a private conversation through a wall? There were no recordings, no witnesses besides Dominic, no evidence. If the police questioned Preston, he would deny everything. Valerie would back up his story. Maya would believe him. Overnight, I would become the paranoid father trying to destroy his daughter's wedding. And once Preston realized I was suspicious, he would speed up whatever he was planning. I couldn't risk that. Instead, I drove straight to Maya's apartment. The elevator felt slower than ever. By the time I reached her floor, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Maya opened the door with a smile. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you." Before I could answer, Preston walked into the hallway carrying 2 coffee mugs. "Harrison," he said with that same perfect smile. "Come in." I ignored him. "Maya, we need to talk, right now." She looked confused. "Is everything okay?" "No." I stepped inside and closed the door. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Preston calmly placed the coffee mugs on the kitchen counter. "I'll give you two some privacy." "No," Maya said. "Whatever this is, you can say it in front of Preston." My stomach sank. She trusted him completely. I took a deep breath. "I was at Dominic's shop today." Neither of them spoke. "I heard you." I looked directly at Preston. "I heard you and Valerie talking." For the first time, I noticed something change in his eyes. Not fear, calculation. It disappeared almost instantly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said quietly. "I heard you talking about the insurance policy." He nodded calmly. "Yes. I heard you talking about medical authorization papers." Also true. "And I heard you say Maya wouldn't come back from Switzerland." The room went silent. Maya looked from me to Preston. "What is he talking about?" Preston sighed, almost as if he felt sorry for me. He walked to his leather briefcase and removed several folders. "I wanted to explain these after the rehearsal dinner." He opened the first folder. "The trust documents." The second. "The insurance required by the bank." The third. "The medical authorization every married couple signs before international travel." Everything looked official. Every page carried legal stamps, professional formatting, attorney signatures. He slid the paperwork toward Maya. "Read it." She spent several minutes looking through the documents. Finally, she looked back at me. "Dad, these are normal legal papers." "They're not." "How do you know?" "Because I heard what he said." Preston never interrupted. He simply waited. Then he quietly spoke. "Harrison," he lowered his voice, "I know losing Martha changed your life." Hearing my wife's name hit me like a punch. "I know you're afraid of losing Maya, too." He looked at my daughter. "I understand why he's scared." Maya reached for his hand. He gently squeezed hers. Then she looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. "Ever since Mom died, you've been terrified of being alone." Every word sounded rehearsed, as if someone had carefully planted those thoughts in her mind. I pointed at Preston. "He's manipulating you." "No." "He is." "No." She stepped directly between us. "I love him." I stared at my daughter. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was protecting him. Then Preston looked over her shoulder and smiled. Not at her, at me. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who knew he had already won. I realized something terrifying. If I kept fighting him now, Maya would cut me out of her life completely. And once that happened, I would never be able to save her. I walked toward the door without another word. "Harrison," Preston called after me. I stopped. "I hope you'll still be there to walk Maya down the aisle." I slowly turned around. "I wouldn't miss it." He nodded. "I knew you'd make the right decision." He thought I'd given up. He had no idea that the moment I left that apartment, I called the only man I trusted to uncover the truth. His name was Victor Thorne, and within the next 48 hours, he would destroy everything Preston Cole had spent years building. Victor's office was nothing like I expected. No expensive furniture, no awards hanging on the walls, just a metal desk, several filing cabinets, and 3 computer monitors filled with public records, court databases, and financial reports. Victor had spent almost 20 years investigating financial crimes before opening his own private firm. If someone had built a fake life, he knew where to look. He listened without interrupting while I told him everything. The tailor shop, the conversation, the insurance policy, the strange medical paperwork, Maya defending Preston. When I finally finished, Victor folded his hands. "Do you have any proof?" "No." "Any recordings?" "No." "Any witnesses besides your friend?" "Only Dominic." Victor nodded. "Then if you go to the police today, nothing happens." I already knew that. "So where do we start?" He opened one of his computers. "With Preston Cole." His fingers moved across the keyboard. "Business records, nothing. Corporate filings, nothing. Investment licenses, nothing. Property ownership, nothing." He frowned. "That's impossible." "What is?" A man who claims to own several technology companies should leave a huge financial footprint. He searched again. Different databases, different states, different spellings. Still, almost nothing. Finally, he looked at me. Harrison, I don't think Preston Cole is his real name. A cold feeling settled in my chest. What makes you say that? Victor turned one of the monitors toward me. Because someone with his story simply doesn't exist. For the next hour, he searched old driver's licenses, archived court records, passport applications, and tax files. Then everything stopped. I found him. On the screen was an older driver's license. Different haircut, no beard, a younger face, but the eyes were unmistakable. The name read Thomas Vance. Victor opened another file, then another. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, financial scams in 3 different states, a prison sentence, several years behind bars. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My daughter wasn't about to marry a successful businessman. She was about to marry a career criminal. But Victor wasn't finished. If Thomas created a completely new identity, he paused, there's usually a reason. He opened an old newspaper archive. One article caught his attention. The headline read, Young businesswoman dies during honeymoon yacht accident. A photograph appeared beneath it. Standing beside the woman was Thomas, using another fake name, smiling exactly the way he smiled beside Maya. Victor quietly read the article. The death was ruled accidental. What happened? She supposedly slipped overboard during a private honeymoon. He opened the insurance records connected to the case. $5 million, paid less than 3 months later. Neither of us spoke. Victor searched again. Another woman, another engagement, another fake identity, another insurance payout. No conviction, no charges, only another tragic accident. Then he opened one more record. This time it wasn't a newspaper. It was a marriage certificate. Thomas Vance, Valerie Vance, issued several years earlier in Nevada. I stared at the document. No. Victor slowly nodded. They aren't brother and sister. They're married. Suddenly everything made sense. The private conversations, the way they always defended each other, the strange looks they exchanged whenever they thought nobody was watching. It had all been an act. Victor leaned back in his chair. Harrison, how many women? I honestly don't know. But this wasn't their first victim. I looked down at the marriage certificate, then back at the photographs of Thomas beside different women. Different names, different states. Always the same smile. Always the same ending. Victor closed the file. The wedding is in 2 days. I know. If they leave for Switzerland... He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he looked directly at me. We don't need to prove Thomas lied. We need to catch him before your daughter becomes his next insurance payment. At that moment, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Maya. Preston surprised me today. He bought special vitamins to help me have more energy before the wedding. I showed the screen to Victor. He read the message once, then very slowly looked back at me. Harrison. His voice had become deadly serious. I think your daughter is already taking them. Victor looked at the message again. Preston surprised me today. He bought special vitamins to help me have more energy before the wedding. He slowly placed my phone on the desk. We're out of time. Within an hour, we were sitting inside a private forensic laboratory on the north side of Dallas. Victor had arranged the meeting through an old contact who specialized in pharmaceutical testing. We need a favor, Victor told the toxicologist. What kind? We need to know exactly what's inside these capsules. The man looked at us. Do you have a sample? Not yet. That was the problem. We knew Maya was taking the pills, but we didn't have one. Victor looked at me. Can you get inside their apartment? I immediately shook my head. Impossible. Think. I closed my eyes. Then I remembered something. The cake tasting. Victor waited. Maya told me tomorrow afternoon they're meeting the bakery. And Valerie? Wedding dress fitting. He smiled. So the apartment will be empty. The next afternoon, we parked 2 blocks away from Maya's building. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. From the car, we watched Thomas and Maya leave together. 10 minutes later, Valerie drove away in another direction. Victor started the engine. It's now or never. The concierge recognized me and waved us through without asking questions. A few minutes later, we were standing inside the apartment. Everything looked perfect. Wedding gifts covered the living room. Fresh flowers sat on the dining table. Family photos were everywhere. Looking at them made me sick. Every smile had been built on a lie. Victor searched the office while I checked the bedroom. Nothing. No medication, no paperwork, no hidden folders. Then I heard Victor tap on the wall. Harrison, I walked over. This room is too small. What? The measurements don't match. He ran his hand along the molding until he found a tiny latch hidden behind a bookshelf. A narrow panel opened. Behind it sat a heavy steel safe. Victor smiled. Bingo! After several tense minutes, the lock clicked open. Inside were stacks of cash, 3 passports, several driver's licenses. Every passport carried Thomas's photograph. Everyone had a different name. I felt my stomach turn. How many lives has this man stolen? Victor didn't answer. Instead, he reached farther into the safe. When he pulled his hand back, he was holding a small orange prescription bottle. There was no pharmacy label, only a strip of white tape. Written in black marker were 2 words: Maya's Vitamins. Neither of us spoke. Victor carefully unscrewed the cap. Inside were blue capsules, exactly the same color Maya had described in her message. He removed 2 capsules and sealed them inside an evidence bag before placing the bottle exactly where he had found it. We've got what we need. Before we could close the safe, we heard the apartment door unlock. Victor's eyes met mine. They're early. We barely had time to hide behind the office door before Thomas walked inside. He came straight into the office. Without realizing anyone had been there, he opened the hidden panel and unlocked the safe. Then he picked up a small burner phone. His voice became cold. The dosage is working. Silence. No, she's getting weaker every day. Another pause. By the time we reach Switzerland, everyone will believe it was altitude sickness. Victor quietly slipped a digital recorder from his pocket and pressed one button. Thomas kept talking. Her heart rate is already lower than normal. A woman's voice came through the phone. Valerie. Everything is ready for after the reception, Thomas laughed. Good. Once we land in Switzerland, there won't be anyone left to stop us. My blood ran cold. That single conversation confirmed everything. We waited until they left the office, then slipped out through the emergency stairwell without making a sound. Less than 3 hours later, the toxicology report was sitting on the table between Victor and me. The doctor looked straight into my eyes. These aren't vitamins, he paused before continuing. They contain powerful beta blockers and heavy sedatives. Victor asked the question neither of us wanted answered. What happens if someone takes these before climbing to high altitude? The doctor closed the report. Their heart may simply stop. In that moment, every piece of the puzzle finally came together. The wedding was only 1 day away. And now we finally had the evidence we needed. The rehearsal dinner felt unreal. 150 guests filled the ballroom, laughing, drinking champagne, and celebrating what they believed would be the happiest weekend of Maya's life. Only 5 people knew the truth: Victor, Richard, myself, and 2 federal agents sitting quietly at opposite ends of the room, pretending to be members of the hotel staff. The FBI had reviewed every piece of evidence we collected: the fake identities, the hidden passports, the toxicology report, the recorded phone conversation. It was enough to open an investigation. But Marcus Hale, the lead federal agent, wanted something even stronger. He has to commit the fraud himself, Marcus told us that afternoon. If Thomas signs legal documents under a stolen identity in front of witnesses, we arrest him immediately. That became the plan. Richard prepared a new version of the trust documents. To Thomas, they looked identical. But hidden inside were federal disclosures and financial certifications that only the real Preston Cole could legally sign. The moment Thomas signed, he would commit multiple federal crimes. He had no idea. When I entered the ballroom, Thomas walked over with the same confident smile. Harrison, he shook my hand. I'm glad we're finally past all the misunderstandings. I forced myself to smile. So am I. For the first time since meeting him, I understood exactly what made Thomas so dangerous. He never looked nervous. He never raised his voice. He made everyone around him feel comfortable. That was his greatest weapon. Maya looked exhausted. She smiled when she saw me, but the sparkle in her eyes was gone. She hugged me. I'm happy you're here. So am I. I held her a little longer than usual. Part of me wondered if this would be the last normal conversation we'd ever have. Dinner passed slowly. People laughed. Family members gave speeches. Thomas played the perfect future husband. Nobody questioned him. Finally, Richard stood. I believe we should complete the final trust documents before tomorrow's ceremony. Exactly as planned. A leather folder was placed in front of Thomas, another in front of me, another in front of Maya. Thomas uncapped an expensive fountain pen. He smiled. This is the beginning of our future. No, I quietly said. He looked at me. I think it's the end. His smile disappeared. What do you mean? I stood. The room became silent. Every guest turned toward us. I reached into my jacket and placed a single document on the table. The Nevada marriage certificate. Thomas looked down. For the first time, his face lost all color. I spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Would you like to explain why the woman you've introduced as your sister is actually your wife? Gasps spread across the ballroom. Valerie froze. Thomas recovered quickly. That's fake. Really? I placed another folder beside the first. His prison records. Another. His fake passports. Another. Photographs from previous investigations. Another. The toxicology report. The room was completely silent. Maya looked from the documents to Thomas, then to Valerie. She couldn't speak. Thomas slowly stood. I think we're leaving. He took one step, then stopped. Hotel servers suddenly surrounded him, except they weren't servers anymore. They reached inside their jackets and displayed federal badges. Marcus Hale stepped forward. Thomas Vance. He deliberately used his real name. You are under arrest for identity fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and multiple federal offenses. Thomas looked toward every exit. More agents appeared. Every door was blocked. There was nowhere to run. For the first time, he looked afraid. Valerie tried to push through the crowd. 2 agents stopped her before she reached the hallway. This is a mistake, she shouted. Marcus calmly held up the trust documents. No, he looked directly at Thomas. You knowingly signed federal financial documents using a stolen identity in front of federal witnesses. Thomas lowered his head. He knew it was over. As agents placed him in handcuffs, Maya slowly turned toward me. Tears filled her eyes. You were telling the truth. I nodded. I'm sorry. She wrapped her arms around me and cried harder than I had ever seen. I should have believed you. I held her tightly. No. I looked at Thomas being led away. You believed a man who spent years learning how to deceive good people. Marcus stopped beside me before leaving. Your evidence reopened 3 older death investigations. I looked at Thomas. So it wasn't just Maya. Marcus shook his head. No. Then he smiled. But because you refused to give up, he looked toward the patrol cars outside. There won't be another victim. As the ballroom emptied, Maya squeezed my hand. Dad. Yes? You always told me that buildings collapse because people ignore small cracks. I smiled through my tears. And families? I looked at my daughter. Families survive because someone is willing to see the truth, even when nobody else does. That night, I didn't walk my daughter down the aisle. I walked her safely into a future she almost lost. And for the first time in days, I knew she was finally free. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Every week, we share true-to-life stories about betrayal, justice, and the moments when the truth finally comes out. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to read your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.